students. In today's class, let us try to understand the Tughlaq dynasty. Okay, in your previous class, I think you have studied about Khiljis, right? How the Khiljis rose to power, how they declined and all. So in today's class, let us study about the Tughlaq dynasty. So the Tughlaq dynasty was established in 1320 CE by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Okay, the founder of Tughlaq dynasty was Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and the Tughlaqs ruled till 1414 CE. So almost from 1320 to 1414 CE. So this Tughlaq dynasty was ruling Delhi as headquarters, or they ruled the Delhi Sultanate. And let us see about some information about the founder Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. So he almost ruled a period of 5 years as a emperor of Delhi Sultanate. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, also known as Ghazi Malik. Ghazi Malik means he was like a defender of Islam, fighter of Islam. He was in such why he was called fighter of Islam, because he was a protector, or you can call him as an expansion person for Islam. So in that manner he was given the title Ghazi Malik. Was half Turkish and half Indian. So one of his parents would be from Turkey and another parent would be from Indian slave origin. So especially his father was of Indian slave origin and his mother was of one of the noble family members of a Turkey. So he was referred as half Turkish and half Indian. He gained support of nobles and officials of Khilji dynasty by liberating them from the ordinances of Alauddin. So, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, how he entered into Delhi Sultanate, how he could capture Delhi Sultanate was the nobles and officials, okay, who were working under Khilji dynasty. So they were having a lot of rules and regulations by Alauddin, right? Alauddin Khilji, during his time, he kept a lot of ordinances, rules and regulations, which the nobles were following even after his death, because that was the ordinances of, or that were the orders of Sultan. So what Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq did was, he liberated these nobles from all such regulations made by Alauddin Khilji. I mean, even the successors of Alauddin Khilji were following the same kind of orders issued by Alauddin. So, this man, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, he promised to the nobles that he is going, if at all they are going to support him for becoming a sultan, then he is going to liberate, that means free them from all such regulations which he kept. So just we studied, right, the spy system, not they should not have any any marriages outside, they should not have wine parties, all such things. So they were all a very serious restrictions on nobles. He said if they could support him to become sultan, he could liberate all the nobles from such orders or regulations. This made the nobles also to work in favor of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. So Ghiyasuddin was a strong administrator and introduced several reforms for the welfare of the people. He also suppressed several revolts in his empire. He built the famous Tughlaqabad fort in Delhi. So it says that he was a strong administrator. See, the kind of method he used to enter into Delhi Sultanate itself shows that how skillful he was. So there are some evidences to show that how he was a strong administrator, because he introduced several reforms for the welfare of people. Okay, so that shows how strong he was in administration. Also, he suppressed revolts. On one side, he was taking care of his people. On the other side, he was also suppressing the revolts who rebelled against him. So these two factors shows that how strong he was in administration. Also, he built Tughlaqabad fort in Delhi. So you can see in the picture this fort. And so Ghiyasuddin died in 1325 CE when a pavilion built by his son Juna Khan to welcome him back from a military campaign collapsed and crushed him. So pavilion means it's a building kind of thing. So just for refreshment and all. Once he came in a big garden, no, they just build like suppose even in cricket grounds and all, you can see this kind of pavilions where the cricketers rest and all. Similarly, this man Ghiasuddin, okay, I mean his son Juna Khan, they had a pavilion to take rest and all like summer rest place and all. So after a military campaign, Ghiyasuddin returned to that place or that building, which was built by his son Juna Khan. But unfortunately, that building collapsed, and Ghiyasuddin got crushed in that collapse, and he died. Some historians even believe that Juna Khan, voluntarily killed his father. That later we will see details, not necessarily going in depth, but just remember that in that building collapse, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq died. So next comes after Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, the next ruler was Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Juna Khan, the son of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, was also referred as Muhammad bin Tughlaq, or he was also called as Ulugh Khan, and under the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he ascended the throne. So his original name was Juna Khan. He was also called as Ulugh Khan, and also during his entry or when his father died, he was the next emperor, right? So when he ascended, that means when he became the emperor of Delhi Sultanate, he took the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was one of the most educated of all preceding Delhi Sultans. Preceding Delhi Sultans means, I mean, till then, there are many dynasties that was ruling Delhi Sultanate. If you compare with all the other sultans who ruled Delhi Sultan, this man was more educated. Who? Juna Khan or Muhammad bin Tughlaq. See, from now onwards, I'll call him as Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So let us stick to this name only. So not any other name. So compared to all other Delhi sultans who were before him, Muhammad bin Tughlaq was well educated, and he was highly educated compared to them. He was, how do you know that he was well educated? What are the proofs that shows that he was well educated? He was well versed. That means he was very much, aware of all the languages. He knows many languages like Persian language, Arabic language, Turkish, and even Sanskrit he was knowing. So such a, I mean, no, very intelligent person he was. He was a he was knowing many languages like Persian, Arabic, Turkish, and even Sanskrit. So that shows how intelligent he was. He was also knowledgeable in many subjects, not only in many languages. He knows many subjects such as astronomy, philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and logic. So he was not only a I mean, like by looking at his skills in different languages as well as in different subjects, we can say that he was a great scholar kind of a ruler. Okay, so he was like a great scholar of those days. So he was knowing many subjects like philosophy, mathematics, and also astronomy. He was also well versed in languages like Arabic, Sanskrit, and Persian. So that shows how good he was at education. And Muhammad bin Tughlaq undertook several ambitious projects. So during his rule as Sultan, he brought certain changes in his empire. He took some ambitious projects. Means ambitious means like he was very much focused towards his goals, and he was very much passionate to fulfill the changes that he wanted to bring, and most of which were brilliantly conceived but ill planned. The ideas of Muhammad bin Tughlaq were very brilliant, in fact, but in executing those ideas or in implementing those ideas, he lacked planning, and his planning went wrong, and hence all his plans got failed. So let us see what was his plans and all in the next slide. But his plans were very brilliant. The changes he wanted to bring were very brilliant, but all those plans failed because of a very irregular and irrelevant planning he did. So for this reason, he was known as a wise fool. Okay, he was wise, but as his decisions were unable, he was unable to implement his decisions. He was called a fool. Okay, so historians considered him as a wise fool. That means he was intelligent, but at the same time foolish. And as the projects failed, the royal treasury got emptied. The number of decisions he took, it made a huge impact on the royal treasury. Royal treasury means the king's treasury. Treasury means a place where the king's, the sultan used to keep all the wealth. See, he used to get wealth through taxes and various other means. So all those taxes and all were deposited in the royal treasury. That means a place where all this wealth is stored. Because of his plans and ambitious projects, he made that treasury empty. So let us see what were his projects and how they got failed. So the projects of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. If you look at the measure he took, and see there are many objectives for him. I said these are the projects, ambitious project. First ambitious project was, okay, to have greater control over his provinces and protect capital from his Mongol attacks. This was his objective, which was very good, right? And I mean, the kingdoms, I mean, under his empire, there are many kingdoms. He wanted to have a good control over all his kingdoms. That's a good objective. And also, he wanted to protect his capital from Mongol attacks. That was also, what was his capital? Delhi. So, he wanted to protect his capital city from Mongol attacks. So this is a very good, good ambition. What measures he took for that? He transferred capital from Delhi to Devagiri. Okay, renamed as Daulatabad. So so what he did to protect his, to have greater control over his provinces and to prevent Mongol attacks, he shifted the capital from Delhi to Devagiri or Daulatabad. So if you look at the map, just a rough map. So Delhi may come here, and he shifted his capital to a more central kind of province like here Daulatabad. So now what happened? Devagiri or Daulatabad, because of shift to fulfill his very intelligent ambitions, he wanted to transfer the capital city from Delhi to Daulatabad. Now, why he failed? Difficulty in controlling North India from Devagiri. So that is, from Devagiri, he could control all other provinces, but the North Indian provinces were very difficult to control. It became little far away from North India, and northwest frontier left vulnerable to Mongol attacks. When he shifted the capital city, this region became, less survive. It was unable for the emperor to have a complete monitorship because he came little far away from. He wanted to protect his capital city, so he changed his capital city from Delhi to Devagiri. Now Delhi was no more capital city. He thought it is not close to northwest region from where the Mongols try to enter. Devagiri is somewhere in the center. By the time the Mongols reach Devagiri, it is easy for him to defeat. But he opened this region more vulnerable to Mongols. The Mongols' entry made easier because the surveillance of empire is less now because he is far away from this northwest region, and Mongols, even though he made Mongols to attack and enter this into this region. Transfer order in summer, this made the long journey from Delhi to Devagiri difficult and harrowing. So what happened was, because he ordered this transfer of capital city in summer days, people could not easily move. Many of them died even in the hot summers. On the way to their capital city Devagiri, many people died. So when he ordered people to move from Delhi to Devagiri, it was summer, peaks of the summer. So many of them on, he actually arranged many things on the way, but they were not sufficient, and many people died on the way itself before they could reach Devagiri, and shifted capital back to Delhi after 2 years. As he realized that, on the other hand, it made Mongols to enter easily. North Indian provinces became less, monitored, and also people were dying to on the way because of this scorching summer heat. He realized his mistake. Again, he shifted his capital from Devagiri to Delhi. That shows his planning was not perfect, and because of his ill planning, he got referred as a fool. And the next project he took was to bring in additional revenue to enhance military resources. So that means he wanted to collect some extra money as a tax from people, and he wanted to invest that money to strengthen his military. So, which is a very good, ambitious project. Strengthening military was a very good thing, but and for that he needs some extra money. From where he can get that extra money? Through taxes. So he increased the taxation in the Ganga Yamuna Doab region, 10 to 20 times increase in revenue in fertile regions. So, see, Ganga Yamuna Doab region was a very fertile region. Okay, so this region, it has fertile land, and the farmers who cultivate land here, they get a very good production from this fertile land, and they are also capable of paying very good taxes regularly. Now what this man did, they ordered these people around Ganga Yamuna Doab region to pay almost 10 to 20 times more than what they pay regularly. If they pay some 10 rupees, now he ordered to pay them 100 rupees. I'm not saying that they were using rupee as currency, just trying to tell you as an example. If 10 rupees was their tax earlier, now he ordered them to pay 100 rupees 10 times. Sometimes he even ordered 200 rupees to pay as taxes, because he understood that that region is having good land, they'll pay very good taxes. But his ambition was good, but his plan was wrong. How it went wrong, that we will see. The measure introduced at the time of severe famine. So when there was a famine, that means when there were lack of rains and there was deficiency of water, and even the Ganga Yamuna rivers, they had a very little flow of water because of lack of rains for several years. Continuous droughts and famine was there. This man, during that time, he ordered the farmers to pay 10 to 20 times more than what they pay. That was a wrong step or wrong plan he did, and discontent and rebellion among farmers. So, looking at the decision of the Sultan, the farmers in this Ganga Yamuna region, they revolted against the Sultan, and they said they will not pay taxes at all, and it even made agricultural adverse effect. So instead of he helping during famines, he ordered them to pay 10 to 20 times more than what they pay. So this created an adverse effect. Instead of you know getting 10 to 20 times more tax, he didn't even receive any tax. That also made another foolish failure. It also, for Muhammad bin Tughlaq, something he used to get from that region. And because of his foolish decision to collect 10 to 20 times tax during famine times, it resulted in no tax for him. Finally, again he has to, his one more ambition got failed. And another ambition was to overcome shortage of silver and to deal with financial crisis. So because of wars, or take because of continuous famines and many such things, what happened during those days, there was shortage of silver coins, and also silver was the mining of silver was little less, and also financially there was a crisis because there were famines in those days. Also Delhi shifting was also a very severe measure that made his treasury empty. So because of all such things, financially there was crisis. Okay, now to deal with the silver, because silver was used as a metal to mint currency coins, okay, the medium of exchange. So silver was in deficiency those days, and also there was financially some crisis in the Sultanate. To deal this thing is a very good ambition, but what measure he took to deal this ambition? He introduced token currency, that means in copper, brass, backed by silver and gold kept in treasury. So in the place of silver and gold coins, he started introducing copper and brass currency. Okay, copper coins and brass coins were used because of lack of silver and gold. There was a deficiency in that they have to explore new mines and they have to unearth those metals. But financially, there was a crisis and they could not explore and unearth those things. So he introduced immediately copper and brass coins in the place of silver and gold coins. So what was why this measure was also a failure? Brass and copper coins had same value as silver coins. So the measure he took was copper and brass is equal to silver and gold. Does it sound very proper? No. Can a copper and gold can be equal in terms of value? It can never be like that. But he introduced that as a currency, and he failed to make coin minting as a state monopoly. That means, see, generally currency has to be minted by the central authority or the central government, or it should be the government's duty. But he failed to completely take control of that coin minting. Even you take copper and brass coin minting, only the government should mint, and it should allow it in circulation for people. But he failed in controlling the minting of currency, circulation of counterfeit coins on large scale. As I said, he failed in controlling the minting of currency or taking control, government's control on currency. People started minting their own coins. See, copper, wherever you have it, it is available easily. So people started minting their own currency, circulating their own copper coins and brass coins. This counterfeit currency, which were minted by people, it also went into circulation, and finally money lost its value in the market. Adverse effect on trade as merchants refused to accept token currency. So people also started minting their own copper and brass coins. Copper, it is very available, at very, I mean, even for people it is available very easily. So they started minting their coins, they started circulating their own currency. If that happens, money will lose its value very soon in the market. So the merchants and the traders, they stopped refusing to take copper coins now. Now, as a result, the market system collapsed in his empire. So with all such decisions, his ambitions were intelligent, but in implementing them, he adopted foolish measures that resulted in failure, and hence he was called a wise fool. And later on, even people started referring any decision like that as Tughlaq decisions. So I told you that during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he wanted to organize a strong army and a very powerful army, and he recruited a large army for an ill-planned expedition. So ill-planned expedition means, so to Kusran and Karachil. So to these places, he wanted to take a large army, and he wanted to take back control on these places. So this also costed him very dearly means very costly. So his idea of recruiting large army was, he actually wanted to cross the Himalayan region, and he wanted to go to this China, and he wanted to occupy China. That was his plan actually. But what happened in between? To reach China, he has to occupy this Kusran and Karachil. So Karachil is the modern day Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so first he has to cross this region. When Tughlaq entered this region with the huge armies, the ruler of Himachal Pradesh or Kurachil, he defeated these huge armies. Now he actually recruited soldiers with more than what with double the salaries he could pay. Okay, he promised to soldiers, and he paid all the salaries in advance because of his future, because he wanted to make this expedition more prestigious. So what he did, he paid all the salaries to soldiers in advance, and the treasury was empty now. And also his expedition to this China was also failure, because on his way he could not even cross this Kurachil region. So thus his other expedition also failed. It became very dearly for him. That means very costly. Many of the soldiers died and his efforts became useless. And revolts broke out in all parts of the empire. So, because of all his foolish decisions, many revolts broke out in all parts of the empire. The Rajputs recovered their kingdoms in Ranthambore and Chittor. So, during this Khiljis and all, this Ranthambore and Chittor was under Delhi Sultanate. Now, under Tughlaq, these places were reoccupied by the Rajput kings. It was originally belonged to Rajputs, and during Khiljis it was taken under their control. But now, under this Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Ranthambore and Chittor went back to Rajput kings. The Deccan states freed themselves from his rule. The southern Indian states also, which were under the control of Delhi sultans, now they also became free from his rule. And because of his this kind of efforts and this kind of failures, the kings slowly realized that he was a very useless sultan. So they slowly started declaring independence to themselves. And two new kingdoms formed during his time, which were called Vijayanagara and Bahamani kingdoms. Because of his ill planning and failures, two most powerful kingdoms also formed in South India, which were called Vijayanagara and Bahamani kingdoms. Bengal and Sindh also asserted their independence. So you take throughout the empire, on western part, this one they started declaring empire, and Ranthambore and Chittor they declared independence. You take on the eastern side, western part also, you take Sindh also declared its independence. You take on the eastern part of India, Bengal declared its independence. Southern part you take, all the Deccan rulers freed themselves. Even two powerful kingdoms formed there. So like this, because of his ill planning and becoming himself as a foolish emperor, many revolts happened, and many of the rulers, many of the kingdoms, they got away from the Delhi Empire. So historians noted that Muhammad bin Tughlaq was an intellectual. Intellectual means he was a very brilliant scholar kind of a person, and he was full of creative ideas. So, because of his education and all, he was a very brilliant man. He was even like an intellectual. He was thinking very differently, creatively, but his ideas were also very creative. His ideas had good intentions and were ahead of his time. So the way he was thinking, like shifting of capital city, I know the way he wanted to protect his capital city, they were all good in fact, but their execution was unplanned. So in implementation of those ideas, he was not, an intelligent man. Only in creating ideas he was very good. In implementing them, he was always impatient. Impatient means he was very provoked, or he was very, what do you call, you know, I mean, he used to take a very hasty kind of decision. That means everything he wanted to finish very fastly. So that kind of impatience nature, and to accomplish his dream of earning a lot of wealth, made him to fail in his all expedition or in all his executions. Because of impatience, that means either he'll be very hurry, or he'll be having a, very irritation kind of a person. If something goes wrong, he'll become irritated and he wanted to do it at a stretch. This kind of nature which he has to accomplish a lot of wealth, to meet the expenditures of his kingdom, made him to fail in all his planning. Therefore, he failed to assess the risks and consequences associated with his ideas. So once he gets an idea, he'll be in a hurry to implement it. For that, he won't think, suppose if he implements this idea, what are the risks associated with that idea? What will happen if that ideas get implemented? That he won't think. Immediately he wanted it to execute. This kind of impatience resulted in his failures. He also punished the people who went against his ideas. So if anyone goes against his idea, he gets easily irritated, and no, he used to punish the people. He never used to take even some kind of suggestions from others. During his rule, there was a discontent and unhappiness. This means discontent means dissatisfaction was there, and also unhappiness. Because of such ruling, see, he was introducing copper coins and all. He spoiled the economy on one way. All the trade and market was completely gone. On the other hand, he shifted capital city, made people to suffer. So all such things made people know to dissatisfy and unhappy with his ruling, and they also suffered most. And know that made also the emperor very cheap in the minds in the in people's minds. Muhammad bin Tughlaq died in 1351 CE, leaving behind a decaying and disintegrating empire. As I said, decay means it is almost, the Delhi Sultanate is now completely gone, because the Rajputs on one side, they are becoming independent. On the other hand, the Deccan states have become independent. On the other side, there is other powerful kingdoms getting established, like this Bahamani and Vijayanagara. All such things made, all the empire got spoiled and disintegrated, means the huge empire which was like united earlier, now it is splitting into small small parts. So these are all the results of his decisions. So then comes the other ruler, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Who was this Firoz Shah Tughlaq? Muhammad bin Tughlaq was succeeded by his cousin Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, his cousin was Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and he became the emperor now, who was nominated by the ulemas and the nobles. So as Muhammad bin Tughlaq died, his cousin was nominated. That means he was selected by ulemas and nobles from the same family of Tughlaq. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was nominated by ulemas. So ulemas are the Muslim religious scholars. Okay, sorry, they are the religious scholars who looks after the sacred, who generally looks after the sacred texts and all. The religious heads you can call. Okay, so these ulemas and nobles, that means ministers, both they nominated Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He tried to revive the tradition of a state based on goodwill and welfare of its people, as visualized by Jalaluddin Khilji. So this man Firoz Shah Tughlaq, now after he becoming Sultan, then he realized that there is a lot of work he has to do to set the empire which went wrong during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time, the empire got disintegrated, the Delhi Sultanate lost its name and fame. So he wanted to revive everything back. He wanted to get that goodwill. That means he wanted to get that good prestigious thing, that prestige of being Sultan back. And also he wanted to take care of people now, because they suffered a lot under Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So he also followed Jalaluddin Khilji in terms of welfare of people. So he followed a policy of appeasement. Appeasement means like to satisfy. Okay, a satisfactory policy he wanted to make of different sections of people. In Tughlaq's time, in Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time, a lot of sections of people suffered, and now Firoz Shah Tughlaq wanted to satisfy all of them with his, new policies. So different people like nobles, soldiers, administrators, clergy means the priestly class in Islam, and farmers, everybody suffered. So he wanted to satisfy all these sections who had felt alienated under Muhammad bin Tughlaq rule. All these sections suffered a lot under Tughlaq's rule. So he wanted to satisfy all these sections with his measures. So what did he do? Firoz Shah Tughlaq introduced many economic and social reforms. So socially he wanted to bring some changes, and economically he wanted to bring some changes for the welfare of the people, so that he can set all the wrongs that happened during Muhammad bin Tughlaq. His main intention was to increase prosperity and happiness. So, on one hand, he wanted to increase the wealth in the empire. On the other hand, he wanted to see happiness in people among his subjects. His subjects means his people, rather than mere conquest of other territories. So, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, to make all these sections of people happy, he focused on two things: creation of wealth in his empire, and he wanted to create happiness among his people. How to create happiness among his people? Instead of going to conquest, that means instead of now going to conquer all other territories, with whatever is remaining now, he wanted to take a full control on this particular territories of his empire, and he wanted to look after the welfare of the people by making them happy. So first, he does not want to bring back all the things which he lost. They see Rajputs became independent, Deccan states became independent, isn't it? Now he don't want to go to all those on a war. He doesn't want to go on a war and bring all those back. He knows that if he goes again into a war with to bring back all the lost territories, the empire would slip into more financial crisis. So he first wanted to look after whatever territory he is having, and he wanted to build prosperity and happiness there. So that was his idea. So, as I said, Firoz Shah Tughlaq introduced many reforms. The important reforms are based on economy. So, economic reforms, it helped the empire to revive again its financial strength. Firoz Shah reduced land tax in the Doab region and abolished many other taxes. So, in the Doab region, Ganga Yamuna Doab region, Muhammad bin Tughlaq ordered 10 to 20 times more than what they pay, right? So, that taxes were all reduced now. So, here Doab region means the land between two regions. So, that Ganga Yamuna Doab region taxes were reduced. With this, the farmers felt very happy. They started paying the regular tax which they pay. And the four types of taxes were levied. That means, unlike many taxes like Tughlaq uh, levied, he did not levied, or he did not ask people, he did not ask many kinds of taxes. He only fixed himself to four kinds of taxes. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, he mainly fixed to four kind of taxes. One is zakat, that means religious tax paid by Muslims for the benefit and welfare of the people. So zakat was collected. So this tax was for religious purpose, a tax which was again used for welfare of the people. And kharaj, land revenue, was collected regularly. It was not very high. It was a affordable tax. And kam, state's share of plunder acquired by soldiers during war. That means, if if the soldiers goes to war and they occupy a particular place, and all the wealth of the place would belong to, now the soldiers will take control of all the wealth, right? After they take control wealth, some wealth should be given back to the government, and some wealth can be distributed among the soldiers. Because of their efforts, they got that particular wealth, right? So he used to distribute some wealth to soldiers, and some of the majority of the wealth will be taken by the government. That tax is called kam tax. And jizya tax, tax charged on non-Muslims. So if any non-Muslim wants to take a holy pilgrimage to their places, so they have to pay a tax called jizya tax. So this kind of four unique taxes were collected, and this were fixed. There is no particular again changes in this. So this made people also, or the economy also, to run very smoothly. He repaired old canals and built new ones so that agriculture could be more productive. Old canals were repaired, and also he built new ones. He laid many gardens and orchards that produce good amount of fruits. So fruit gardens were grown everywhere in the empire, so that it gives they were traded internally and externally. Those fruits were exported and to various places, and it generated revenue for the kingdom. So wherever there is an empty land and all, he ordered people to, or he ordered his men to start fruit gardens. so that all that fruits were sold and it generated some kind of revenue. So he knows how to create wealth. So this kind of economic reforms made Firoz Shah Tughlaq a very successful ruler. He also built many new towns like Hisar and Firozabad, so that creation of new towns will create more economic activity, and it more economic activity will invite more merchants and traders, so that he can generate more wealth. So this kind of economic reforms made Firoz Shah Tughlaq a very uh, a very popular person. There are also some judicial reforms. That means in terms of punishment and giving judgments, he brought some changes. He abolished the brutal torture system. So during Muhammad bin Tughlaq, if anybody goes against him, there will be a very severe kind of punishments used to happen. That he abolished, and he punished the guilty with petty fines and small term imprisonment. So unlike Muhammad bin Tughlaq, if anybody does crime also, he used to, Firoz Shah Tughlaq made to to charge very less fines, also to have very small kind of imprisonments, short term imprisonments and all. It was not very severe in, torturing his own people. He was not like that. He wanted to correct them instead of torturing them. He himself heard the cases and administered the proceedings of the courts. So, to whatever extent possible, Firoz Shah Tughlaq himself used to listen to all kinds of cases that comes to his notice, and he used to pass judgments and proceedings of the courts. That gave a confidence to people that yes, the Sultan will look into good and bad of them if any problem comes. So this kind of judicial reforms also made the empire to proceed towards stability. So other reforms that he took up was he gave a lot of importance to education. So he established schools and colleges. So I'll just say it in a very short manner. His education was a priority for him. So he started schools and colleges. Then betterment of slaves was his priority. He wanted to look after slaves who were in service of the empire for long periods of time. So he doesn't want to treat them in a very ill manner. He wanted to treat all the slaves in a better manner. So what he did, he started a separate department to look after the slaves. He created a department. He introduced some kind of welfare programs for them and also provide them with employment opportunities. So thus slaves, he turned all the slaves to loyalty. All the slaves turned very loyal to the emperor. Constructed many public utilities. That means there are many things which the public require. So also like hospitals, public baths, reservoirs, rest houses, and bridges. All such things were constructed by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He also constructed Sar ul Shafa hospital for poor people. So he understood that people need hospitals, public toilets, reservoirs, rest houses, because on their way to pilgrimage and all, they need some rest houses and bridges to connect between places. So all such needs he understood and he provided. So poor people especially become very happy with the measures of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, because they were even having a hospital if they get sick and all. Firoz Shah established different department known as Siwani Khairat. Okay, he established a very peculiar department called Siwani Khairat. What was this department used to do? It used to look after the arrangement of marriages of poor girls and orphans. So if somebody is poor and they cannot afford to have marriage and all, he used to help for their marriages through this department. And also orphans, those who are left without parents, they were also taken care, in terms of their livelihood as well as their marriage. So such reforms made Firoz Shah Tughlaq again to revive back the glory of Delhi Sultanate. So military campaigns. So as I told you that in the very beginning, that after he came as emperor, he doesn't want to lead any campaigns or attacks on others, and first he wanted to set his home properly. So he was focusing on welfare activities of people. After bringing the empire to certain prosperous level, then he started his military campaigns. He led his two campaigns. He was a good humanitarian, but lacked the qualities of a warrior. So he was not that effective in bringing back all the lost territories during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time. He tried, he led two campaigns, Bengal, Orissa, and Nagarkot, but and another 2.5 year campaign to lower Sindh against Tatta. So in Sindh region and this Odisha and Bengal regions, which became independent during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time, he tried to lead this to take them back, but however, these campaigns did not help them add these territories back. So Bengal, Sindh, and Orissa, this all went under the control. They became independent actually. They were not paying any taxes to Sultan and all. They became independent. He tried. Firoz Shah Tughlaq tried to occupy these places, but it was unsuccessful because he was not like a very strict warrior. He was not like a cruel warrior kind of a man. So he was unable to take back these places under his control. And Firoz Shah ruled till 1388 CE. His successors were weak and incompetent. That means after Firoz Shah, the rulers who ascended the throne of Delhi Sultan, they were unworthy rulers. They were constantly fight with among the nobles that led to the disintegration of Delhi Sultanate. So the rulers who ascended throne after Firoz Shah Tughlaq, they were constantly in fight with nobles. See, naturally due to their decisions, the nobles may disagree. So now the nobles and the rulers were constantly at fight with each other, leaving the administration into, again problems. So all such led again into more disintegration of Delhi Sultanate. That means more and more kingdoms started declaring independence from Delhi Sultanate, and the Tughlaq rule, however, continued till 1414 CE. With such fights among rulers and between rulers and nobles, the Tughlaq rule continued up to 1414 CE. So almost with weak rulers, the Tughlaq dynasty was in trouble. During this time, Taimur's invasion created more problem. Amir Taimur, also known as Taimur, was a Mongol ruler from Central Asia. So Taimur, who was a Mongol ruler, he attacked during this weak rule of Tughlaq dynasty. Timur understood that Tughlaq dynasty had become unstable and would not be able to counter his attacks. Earlier during Khiljis and all, these Mongols used to afraid because they were very powerful warriors, and he even Alauddin Khilji even defeated them 5 times. So they were waiting for a chance to attack Delhi. Now Tughlaq dynasty, after Firoz Shah Tughlaq, it went into the hands of unworthy and weak rulers. Realizing this, Timur, he attacked India and he plundered its wealth. So almost for 1 year, he continuously attacked India and he took away all the wealth. He ravaged Delhi and brutally massacred lakhs of people. So I told you this that Mongols had a very brutal kind of wars. They just go on beheading people and all. So this he killed lakhs of people and he took away a lot of wealth. Already Tughlaq dynasty was in trouble with weak rulers, and Timur's invasion set as a final blow to already unstable Tughlaq dynasty. That means with Timur's invasion, Tughlaq dynasty vanished away from Delhi Sultanate. So you can see Timur in the picture here. So Sayyid dynasty. Timur appointed Khizr Khan as a governor of Multan, Punjab, before leaving India. So during Timur's invasions, okay, there was a governor of Punjab who was very loyal to him, who was called Khizr Khan. So he appointed Khizr Khan as a uh, you know governor of Punjab because he occupied all those places, and Punjab was a very important place for Mongols to enter India. So he appointed Khizr Khan as governor of Punjab before leaving India, and Khizr Khan established the Sayyid dynasty, and it ruled for almost 38 years from 1414 to 1451 CE. After Tughlaq dynasty, it was Sayyid dynasty's rule. Sayyids are the people, I mean, Sayyid dynasty was founded by Khizr Khan. Who was this Khizr Khan? He was governor of Punjab and he was appointed as governor by Timur. So to enter into India, Punjab was a very important place. So for that important place, this Timur kept his governor called Khizr Khan. And this man, after Timur's left, after the leaving of Timur from India, he declared himself independent and he established Sayyid dynasty and started ruling from Delhi. The last ruler of Sayyid dynasty was Alam Shah, who ascended the throne in 1443 CE. So much of the information is not available with Sayyid dynasty. So whatever it is, like the last ruler was Alam Shah, and the Sayyids claimed that they were the descendants of Prophet Muhammad, as they belonged to Quraysh tribe. So this was the basic details that is available with Sayyid dynasty. So coming after the Sayyid dynasty, then comes the last dynasty called Lodi dynasty. So the last ruler of Sayyid dynasty, Alauddin Alam Shah, voluntarily renounced his throne and left Delhi. So Alam Shah, no, he was not interested in this ruling and all. So he left Delhi. He was unable to control all these territories, and also what he did, he voluntarily renounced. That means he just gave up the idea of being the Sultan and he left the Delhi throne, without any ruler, and he left. So now the Delhi Sultan is without any ruler. During such situation in 1451 CE, Bahlul Lodi, an Afghan chief, established the Lodi dynasty. So these Afghans were like nobles or ministers in the court of the rulers or the emperors. So one of the Afghan chief by name Bahlul Lodi, he came and he ascended the throne of Delhi Sultanate. So from here onwards, Lodi dynasty started ruling Delhi Sultanate. The Lodi dynasty was the last ruling dynasty of Delhi Sultanate. So the Lodis were the last people to rule Delhi Sultanate. And Sikandar Lodi succeeded. So after Bahlul Lodi, who came the next Lodi ruler? Sikandar Lodi succeeded Bahlul Lodi. And what was his contribution? He established a new city called Sikandrabad. Okay, not our Sikandrabad here, near Hyderabad. This is Sikandrabad, now located near Agra. Sikandarbad, you can call Sikandarabad. So this was the contribution of Sikandar Lodi, was successor of Bahlul Lodi. After Sikandar Lodi, Ibrahim Lodi was the last ruler of Lodi dynasty as well as the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, it is said that he was an arrogant ruler and treated the Afghan nobles with little respect. This Ibrahim Lodi, he had he was a very arrogant and very impatient man. So he always treated his ministers are Afghan nobles. Okay, the ministers who came from Afghan used to work under his emperorship, and he treated them very badly. And angered by the ill treatment, the nobles invited Babur, the ruler of Kabul, to invade India. So the ministers were waiting for a chance to go against the emperor now, because he was not treating them properly. Everywhere he's trying to suppress them, Ibrahim Lodi. So to defeat Ibrahim Lodi, his own ministers had a plot or conspiracy, and these ministers, they went and they to Kabul, where Babur was ruling. Babur was a famous ruler by this time, and they invited Babur to come and occupy Delhi Sultanate, and they would help them for it. And Babur met Lodi in the first battle of Panipat. That means when Babur came to India, okay, in a place called Panipat, Ibrahim Lodi versus Babur, a big war happened. And in this war, it was called First Battle of Panipat. And in this battle, defeated the leading to the establishment of Mughal Empire. In this first battle of Panipat between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi and he established Mughal Empire in India. Thus, the Delhi Sultanate ended and the beginning of Mughal Empire will start. So if you look at the overview of decline of Delhi Sultanate, no single emperor can be held responsible. All are responsible in one or other way. Okay, there is no, you cannot say that only one ruler made, because of him the entire Delhi Sultanate declined. Everybody had their own contribution for the decline of Delhi Sultanate. There were numerous powerful nobles who had either a clan following their own or strong links with a region. Their clans were powerful and ambitious. So always the nobles and the emperors, I know their own ambitions and their own choices made the Delhi Sultanate very weak. Military generals posted as governors of distant places. So always military generals. See, the military generals were kept as in charge of provinces such as Bengal, Sindh, Gujarat, and Daulatabad. As they are military generals, they can easily revolt against the emperor, and that made them to become away from the emperorship. If the ruler is a military general, he would easily plan against the emperor, and he can declare himself independent because all armies he can kept under his control. This was a wrong administrative thing that Delhi sultans did. Many rulers of sultan were not tolerant of non-Muslims and imposed Islam on all. So during those days, there were Rajputs, the Hindus, and many things. So on one hand, they ill-treated Rajputs, and the other hand, they were imposing jizya tax on non-Muslims. So the local support to Delhi Sultanate was always lagging throughout the course of the Delhi Sultanate rule. So non-Muslims, they never supported the emperor. That was also a drawback for which made the Delhi Sultanate to decline. And frequent Mongol invasions. This also made the treasuries to be emptied and wealth to be taken away, which resulted in great economical crisis. And in the course of its rapid disintegration, regional and provincial states, feudal principalities, along with two great kingdoms formed. So when the empire is weak, it started disintegrating into many small parts, and also emerge of two southern powerful Indian kingdoms called Vijayanagara and Bahmani. This also made Delhi Sultanate to decline.